So I did Cinderella. I started out brainstorming versus jumping straight to the process of the characters. I wanted to get my ideas out, so I kind of started brainstorming the scenes, and I started with how I thought Cinderella would look, and next to her mother's gravestone, and the twig that her father gave her from being on vacation. And I kind of did some process on how the tree grew, and then I was experimenting with colors as well. I decided my final colors were to be a pale green, more of a magenta, a black, and a white. I chose these colors because they are complementary colors, but I feel like they're also different. And I did want the stepsisters and the stepmother to be red, but I felt like red was a little bit too much. So I kind of tried to reduce that impact on the PowerPoint. This is my process work for the characters. I started out with Cinderella. I've always wanted her to have a bow. I felt like that kind of signified it. I decided that I didn't want her to have gold hair. I felt like I was bringing it back to the actual Disney Cinderella, so I kind of changed it up a little bit. And with that, I tried to use rounded edges from Molly Bang's book, and how she felt round and curvilinear were more comfortable, and sharp edges were more uncomfortable, scary. And so that's why I applied the sharp edges to the stepsisters and the stepmom. And that's the final for the stepsisters, and then that's the final for Cinderella. And these are the progress of objects that I included within my slides. This was the stepsisters and the stepmother's house. And I referred back to the color as the color of their characters because I wanted it to show that that is their house. Also, I had some sinks for the scene for when the sisters are making fun of Cinderella and she's cleaning their dishes. So this is the start of progress for scene 1. This is Cinderella, and that's the sink, and I had dishes next to it, and I wanted to include a window to avoid maybe a lot of white space to give it a little bit more dimension and contrast. And then I added some black tile. And I didn't like how there was only one stack of plates, so I made them into 3 stacks, showing that there's 3 women in the house that are very equal to her. And I added some cups over there, and then I added her mother's tree that she planted the twig next to behind her gravestone, the magical tree. I put that back in here, and I tried to relate that next to her hair, showing that it does show family relation. And through it all, I realized that I had 5 colors. So the first 2 progress of the scenes, you'll see 5 colors, but at the end I changed it all. So I changed it and I made it into 4 colors, and I also connected the tree with her hair, showing that that is where she goes for comfort. I connected her body. I chose to have that color be the same as the sisters and the mom, showing that they forced her to dress a certain way. They took away all of her clothes. And the fact that the dishes and the cups are the same color as them because it shows that she's cleaning their stuff. And that was the final for the first slide. Oh, and also I applied Molly Bang's idea of having the focus, the scary, up more closer to the audience than Cinderella, and she's very sad. It reminded me of the scene where Molly Bang had the wolf in the front and Little Red Riding Hood in the back. So I tried to apply that. Now this is the progress for the second scene. This is the tree in which grew from the twig. This is the gravestone, and then this is the dress that the birds bring in. And I chose the dress to be gray, which was one of the 5th colors, so I had to change that. But because it was a sparkling silver, and that's kind of where my gray came from the whole time. Now I wanted the background to be black because in the story it's specifically says that she always goes to the tree when the family really isn't around. And I feel like the only time that they weren't like making fun of her or anything was when they were sleeping. So I kind of took it upon myself to make it during the nighttime. When I did have red, I used the red to show that that is their house, and the shoes showing that the birds dropped it. I added the moon to show it's nighttime. I added a bigger tree, a smaller tree, and an even smaller tree to show how it is in the distance and she's away from the house. And this right here is the soil from the grave. I didn't want it to seem like a shadow, so I added little like colors of pebbles or dirt just to kind of show that there cannot be a shadow with the moon. And also I added a little bird's nest to show this is where the magical birds are from, and I kind of linked the white and the white because they are white birds. And then I changed all the colors and I took the fifth color out. So I used the one color and I tied it back to everything that had to do with Cinderella, including the dress, the hair, the shoes. And I kept the magenta outfit of hers showing that she hasn't changed and it's still what her mother or her stepmother has put on her. So that was the final of that scene. And this is the last scene where Cinderella is at the festival, and this right here is the process work of the ballroom. So I added some design at the top, and then the color, because I felt as if green was a sweet and kind color. She tried to, she was very interactive with nature as well. So this is her, and then this is the prince. I also made him green because I felt as he saw good in people and he is a good person because he sees the greatness in Cinderella and he can look behind how dirty she is and see her true beauty. And now I added different types of people to be dancing in the ballroom. I didn't give them any color, I didn't give them any detail because in my opinion, they weren't as important to this scene. It's still, they are dancing in a festival and they are definitely needed. And I also added the 3 evil family members in the back, kind of in shock that it was her that got chosen. I added them in the back because I felt the focus point was on Cinderella, and like they're in the back of her head, so I felt like they should be in the back of the scene as well. And then I came to the conclusion that they can't be floating in midair, so I made the background a little bit wider, and I put them on the ground. And then I felt as if there was too much white space, so I added some banners and canopies to hang down, and I also changed the ceiling color because I felt like the ceiling should be the same color as the floor, and with the floor you would be able to easily see the other people dancing. And my final scenes of the Cinderella presentation is
Try down at the bottom. Yeah, the middle icon. You got it. Are you tongue-tied because we have a guest? I know you know how to duck.
I really like your color choices in comparison to your I guess previous slides where you're doing the work, because the magenta, like you said, it's not, red was kind of harsh, the magenta is a lot. It still shows that they're evil in a way, but not like overpowering the scenes. So I really like the color choices.
Thank you.
I really like how you form your characters. I think that, like if I looked at this, I'd be like, yeah, Brittany made this because you like way to your characters. And I like how much detail you put into like making things closer and further away, and like how you added like the sparkles on her dress in the second scene, and just like your details are really nice.
And also one other pointer, I noticed after, just now, on this scene, the second scene, it's kind of hard to tell, but she has white dirt marks, and that was my mistake, and in all of the other scenes she had black. And subconsciously, I think I did that because it was light outside and here it's dark outside, but I wish I could go back and change that to become balanced throughout the whole presentation. And that was what I found, and I was like, oh my gosh, I wish I could.
What do you think about that proposed change or anything else?
I was gonna add on to your second slide. I was gonna say that your trees, like you were talking about how you wanted to add perspective, but like, I don't know, they get taller as you go back. That-
Yeah.
So I guess that would be one thing I would change in that slide. If you wanted to add that perspective, make those trees, get narrower or something as they go back and shorter, or, something to add a little more perspective to those trees then. Because the one up close looks like a bush.
Yeah, definitely.
I like how in the third scene, the prince and Cinderella are up front, they're obviously the main focus, but I like how the three in the back stand out because they are the only thing magenta. So I like how you have like two different focuses, but use different techniques to like get that message across.
In the first scene, I don't know, it's kind of nitpicky, but like, it just looks kind of confusing because there's no like, like under your sink, there's no like cabinets, there's no like line of the floor on the bottom of the cabinet.
That's a great
So,
observation.
yeah, it just looks like we're floating somewhere around.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I didn't even, that was one thing that completely slipped my eyes.
Well, you have a lot of detail in your kitchen, so I think that Jen's right. It really kind of calls for you to need that line in the front. There's one other little tweak that I think you could do here. I love the idea that you have 3 plates, because she's there to wash their dishes. We think we kind of have the image that she probably had to eat out of her hands in the kitchen herself or whatever. But they look a little bit to me like misplaced halos over the people. So I think maybe just tweaking their positions a little bit so that we're sure we're looking at plates and not something, and that the plates are attached by the color rather than the positioning here. Anybody else see any tweak or anything like that you wouldn't?
So maybe you could have them kind of look like they're surrounding Cinderella, like move their facial expression so they look like one of them's facing, left, one of them's from the back, and one of them's like from the right. So like, really going at Cinderella, and then that can then center them around the frame, and then center Cinderella in the middle of them, so then they'll be away from the plates,
Yeah.
and they'll be a little more menacing.
That's possible. And another thing though, what I read from this to begin with was they're obnoxious enough to make their presence known to her so that she knows she's being watched and assessed and what have you. But that they have their backs turned to her. Now maybe you didn't intend that, but that was the notion that I got here, which makes them seem extremely snotty indeed. But you need to decide exactly, I think, these are suggestions. You need to decide exactly what kind of point you're trying to capture here to see about any repositioning. Did you have any comments you want to make about this?
No, just though in general, this is the third, this is only the third, this is the third of these that I've seen. The prior two, I would say, operated in the world of minimum, okay? They had a minimum number of figures, a minimum amount of detail. The idea of animation of the figure spaces, for instance, is one that I hadn't seen before. But even with this additional material, this is a comment about the challenge in general, that I'm going to bring you back to your writing and your speaking. Just as we have a chance to reflect upon these images and the subtlety, for instance, of the floating crowns, or in the ballroom scene of the disengaged heads from the body because of the way the horizon line of the floor is set. And these are like floating gnomes. What the result is, they're like floating gnomes, their heads. That these subtle, precise moves change the mood of the image. Moving this back to your writing for the future and to your speaking for the future. Each word, each phrase, when you write for business or presentations to the world, when you write a letter of introduction, has that same kind of demand as you just thinking professionally. Now, many of you are probably expert texters. So you've already understood how to minimize things with texting. But the issue is, it's one thing to be texting to friends. It is quite another to be then texting or speaking to an audience. So what I love about this is, first of all, the effort to translate a narrative to relatively minimal graphics, to understand the subtlety of the articulation of very few elements, and then to think back to language and your writing, and how if every word counts on those three images, every move, every word, every act of grammatical construction matters in language. So I love it. And I thought your presentation was fine. This was great. So this is just a reflection now for me, having seen 3 of these, and the rigors and the integrity with which the group has responded to these. And think about it now as you write and prepare your next public presentation.
I'm going to give you just a couple of quick points, Brittany, and then we'll move on. I was delighted with a lot of, oh, I'm sorry, did you have a comment, Emily?
Nah.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that the bow in her hair kind of looks more like a flower to me and not a bow.
You know what? I was going to comment on the bow here, and you guys can see it differently. But I was going to say that a couple of things I liked was that whether or not you initially were thinking of it as representing necklaces or whatever, those heads are so much more wicked for that white space there and the jagged kind of line underneath it, that I really appreciated that. When you first said, I knew I wanted her to have a bow, I was kind of surprised that you started with that. And I actually thought that the bow looking like the flower tied her back to the natural setting. As this story is presented to us, this version of the story, that place outdoors and the doves coming to the rescue with the, thing like that, made that the place of sanctuary and the place of redemption, both out there. And I like the bowl looking kind of floral for that reason. I mean, it did occur to me too that it looked at the first glance when I just looked at the slides, was it a flower in her hair or a bow? And then you said, I knew I wanted her to have a bow.
And a super scale too.
Mm-hmm. I think they were good touches. They really were. I like some of the thinking behind this so well, and I did appreciate, I think you did a good job with telling us why you did what you did, how you picked the colors. I like the colors you picked. There can be some tweaks done to the scene. And that thing when you said, oh, now if I were to do it again, you can do it again when you put it in your blog for the final if you want to make those changes, okay? Because they do a final version of the 3 scenes according to what's going on with the critique and whether or not they accept that. So, good job, Brittany. Very good job.